video, we'll be going over IRS Notice CP16T. This is the tax notice that you might receive from the IRS in the case that you have a miscalculation on your tax return. So in this case, we'll walk through the notice. We'll kind of outline what happened and whether or not there's anything that you need to do about this. So as I normally do in these videos, we're going to start with the upper right hand corner. So you'll see the CP Notice 16, that's the notice number, tax year 2018. The notice date is February 9th of 2019. And I'll ask you to pay particular attention to the notice date because if there's any action required, like for example, if this results in a tax bill that you need to pay, there's usually a timeline, limited number of days. Maybe the notice says, pay this bill within 21 days. Please respond within so many days of this notice date. So when the IRS makes that request, they're specifically discussing the number of days from the notice date. So always keep that in mind, because if you're asked to do something to avoid further penalties and interest, then this notice date will be very important. Below that is the Social Security number, contact information for the IRS, and then a caller ID if you needed to identify your specific situation. Over on the left-hand side is the taxpayer name and address, and I'll highlight this as a second point that I usually tell people to keep their address up to date with the IRS. So normally whenever you file your tax return, your address will be updated with the address that's on your most recent tax return. So if you've changed locations, if you've moved, then the next time you file your tax return, your tax record should be updated within your tax record. However, if you're in between tax records, it's a good idea to update the IRS with your new record, with your new address, either by calling the IRS, which you can call them at this 800 number. So if you're going to call to talk about your tax situation, you can just as easily change your address over the phone. The second way that you can do that is filing the official change of address notice. So for individual taxpayers, that's IRS Form 8822. For business owners, that would be IRS Form 8822-B. So we'll put links in the show notes to any articles or videos that we've created about tax forms that we mentioned in this video. So, keep your address up to date. That way, when the IRS sends a notice, it goes directly to your box instead of getting routed and forwarded to your new address, which can take up time that is, limited in nature generally. So, in here, we're going to get to the meat of what's happening. So in this letter, it appears that there's a miscalculation on the taxpayer's Form 1040, specifically probably somewhere on Schedule A with itemized deductions. So the IRS made those changes, and the result was an overpayment of $400. So the IRS took $396.09 as the overpayment to the following year's tax return, and then there was $3.91 of interest charges that were accrued somehow. So if you agree with the notice, you don't need to do anything. You would simply just update your estimated tax payments. So if you're calculating your next year tax responsibility, you would just include this $396 in your quarterly payments that have already been made. So you could, in theory, lower your quarterly payments by $100 per quarter and still be on track. We'll put links in the show notes to some of the videos that we've done about the estimated taxes and payment vouchers and things of that nature. So if you want to update your contact information, you can call the IRS. You can also send in this update slip So whenever the IRS sends a kind of a cutoff form that you can send back to them, I always tell people that if you're going to use this, forward your correspondence or your payment or whatever it is that you're sending to the IRS. Follow the instructions here. So make sure that your correspondence has your social security number, the tax year, and your form number, and then also send it to this address here. Sometimes that is a different address from up here. For example, this is P.O. Box 9019. It's the same P.O. box, but I have seen IRS notices where this contact information is in a completely separate or different city and state from the address on the letterhead. So just pay attention, follow this as guidance. That's kind of a general best practice, I think. So if you don't agree with the changes, you can contact the IRS. You can review your account. Below that, it kind of shows the tax calculations. So in this case, it shows that your calculations on, for adjusted gross income and taxable income are identical to the IRS calculations, but then there was a difference in the payments. So this is what resulted in the $400 difference. My suspicion is that this is, completely different from what it says here, where the itemized changes were, or itemized deductions were changed on, which are listed on Schedule A. Here in the calculations, it doesn't show any difference in the taxable income figures. So I think this is just an example created by the IRS as a hypothetical situation. I would expect to see actual differences between the taxpayer calculations and the IRS calculations that result in that $400 difference. So this is a section that talks about your spouse's debts. So this talks about innocent spouse relief and injured spouse relief, which I believe now is called injured spouse allocation. So two separate concepts that are easily confused. The innocent spouse relief is on a different tax form from the injured spouse allocation. So innocent spouse is a situation where one spouse is responsible for an improper item or a tax underpayment on a joint tax return. And there are certain stipulations within the form instructions. Some situations there's a domestic abuse component to that. That's all contained in the tax form, and I'll put links in the show notes to both of these tax forms. But basically what you're telling the IRS is, we filed a tax return and either my spouse did things that I did not know about while we were filing that joint tax return, or I was forced into a situation where I knew my spouse was doing the wrong thing and I was, not able to do anything about it. I was intimidated. I was threatened. Whatever that situation is, this form kind of covers a lot of different innocent spouse type situations. So the IRS is particular about making sure that under innocent spouse relief, one spouse is held responsible while the other spouse may be kind of let off the hook. So as I mentioned, the innocent spouse relief form actually goes into a lot more detail about how you can claim that. So this is just general guidance. Injured spouse allocation is a different concept. So imagine you might be in a second marriage and your spouse before you were married had some sort of past due debt. So it could be child support, alimony, student loans, Social Security overpayments, whatever the case may be. there may be some sort of status where they're in a collections period. So, you know, when the, state child support agency, for example, can submit a report to the Treasury Department that says a particular taxpayer owes $10,000 in child support, and then the Treasury Department will make sure that all the federal agencies are aware of that. So if there's a tax refund, the IRS will be instructed to garnish that refund to pay down the child support debt. If that person's collecting Social Security, then there's a certain part of the Social Security payments that can be garnished to pay that child support, so on and so forth. Anything that with a federal payment can be subject to what's known as the Treasury offset program. So we'll put links in the show notes to a couple of articles that go into more detail about how that works. So the injured spouse allocation or relief basically is telling the IRS, hey, you took part or all of my refund that I was entitled to pay down my spouse's debt that I had nothing to do with. And in the Internal Revenue Code, there's a way for that injured spouse to get relief so that they can receive their share of the tax refund. So, for example, if John and Susie Doe end up with a $2,000 refund and John owes child support from a previous relationship, the IRS may be instructed to take that entire refund and pay down that child support. But if Susie says, hey, wait a minute, I earned 50% of the income, I paid my fair share of taxes, my share of the refund should not have gone to pay down that debt. She can submit IRS Form 8379. She can document, what of the tax liability, of the tax payments, all of those things that she was responsible for. And in a situation where each spouse contributes 50%, she would be able to get her 50% of the refund back, which would be $1,000 in that situation. So IRS Form 8379 goes through that. And as I mentioned, we'll put links in the show notes with more detail. So there's a little bit of additional information here. I did check this out before starting this video. I think this is a broken link. So I don't think that there's any additional information. Normally you would see additional information from the IRS. For example, that's what a CP16 notice looks like. But I don't see a similar page for a CP16T. So we get back to the broken link. So that's all we have. I think all the information you need really is located in the notice itself. So as I mentioned, we'll put links in the show notes to all the articles and videos that we've created about some of these forms and topics mentioned here. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another topic that you'd like to see in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.